workplace safety just doesn't get people fired up very often unless something goes wrong. And so what I'd like to do today is share with you some information about current status of accidents and injuries in pork production, and then eventually get to some tools that have been provided by utilizing your pork checkoff dollars to hopefully help improve the workplace safety, not only for your business but also for your employees. So, why safety? Safety is one of the key ethical principles that U.S. pork producers have adopted. Back in March 7, 2008, the Pork Act delegate body representing all pork checkoff funds agreed and approved that these are the principles that we as an industry operate under to produce safe food, protect and promote animal well-being, protect the public health, safeguard natural resources, take care of our employees, and be good community members. I want to hone in on the work environment that is safe. Within each of these ethical principles, there are obligations underneath. And here are the three in the area of employee care. And the first one addresses workplace safety. U.S. pork producers affirm their obligation to provide a safe workplace, to train their employees, and to treat them fairly and with respect. And the leadership at Pork Board has and will continue to provide resources to help improve workplace safety and employee care. So what's the safety risk? Let's talk about what kind of risk are you facing. And this is basic safety, folks. Let me just back up a little bit. Who has a specific responsibility for workplace safety in a pig operation? Okay, safety complete over the whole operation. Sole responsibility.
Not sole responsibility, but a person that's
okay.
trained.
Okay. We see a range in the industry from this kind of situation to operations that have full-time safety directors. We have people with HR directors with some safety responsibilities. We have production people with some safety responsibilities. Then we have operations where there's nothing dealing with safety from a risk management standpoint. So we have employee health and well-being, of course. There's a primary risk in raising pigs, injuring people. But there's also business performance risk, regulatory risk, and a legal risk. So let's break these down. Talk about risk to the employee. Share some data with you from Bureau of Labor and Statistics in 2007. Accident and injury rate here. And here's a formula for it. Basically, it's a comparison ratio. So we look at the total number of injuries and illness times 2,000 hours. That's the equivalent of 100 workers working 20,000 hours a year. Gives us this incident rate. Basically, what this indicates is that we're double the general industry average. This raises a red flag for pork producers. We'd like to drop that down. And we look at DART rate, which is days away from work, and reduced time, which is another ratio. And there's another formula for it, and it ties back to total number of hours lost during a year in relationship to total number of hours potentially worked by that organization. Darn near 3 times on a DART rate. So people are getting hurt on the job, and they're being away from work or either transferred to light duty work. Now, risk to business performance is pretty obvious. You get somebody hurt, you're going to lose their time, but you've also got that loss of experience, potential lower production efficiencies because people having to cover each other's tracks, bring somebody new in, and also insurance premiums will go up as we look at accident injury rates. So, and insurance premiums, I wish we could have a survey of all insurance providers, and I don't. But I do have some data from one insurance company that covers a significant amount of pigs here in the Midwest. Southern Minnesota, Iowa, eastern Nebraska. And this is data from 1 year, 2007. This company had 802 claims. And folks, let me back up. The reason the insurance premiums are high to pork producers is that when an insurance company covers a pork producer, typically it costs that insurance company more money than it does somebody else because there are more accidents and injuries in a pig operation. we look at this company had 802 claims, over $3 million in total paid out, loss of payroll over $112 million, disability cases 120, nearly 6,000 disability days. And then these bottom two figures relate to the PPO penetration. That relates to the percentage. I'm not sure of the formula, but it's a figure used to benchmark how much money it's costing this insurance company to cover pig operations versus their other general customers. A little over 23 employee years of disability days were lost in this 1 year. So insurance is high. And I just want to throw this one up. I like using it because these are the top claims that this insurance company had to pay out. And I hope you can read this. It looks like we can't dim these lights up here, but I'll point these out. You know, feeding down to euthanize a pig, and the back gave out. $150,000 claim. Feed cart got caught on a feeder, and when the feed cart was pulled off, had a wrench in the back, $90,000. $83,000, $82,000. Check this one out. This is one. Sometimes you wonder how these things get through. Employee was pulling off her coveralls when she injured her left shoulder. $71,000. I'd darn near go buy a pair of coveralls if I could swing that and get a wrenched shoulder out of it. So the way the liability and insurance world is set up, there can be significant claims made and significant dollars paid out. So insurance premiums are a risk to the business. What about the regulatory risk? Well, first thing that comes to mind is OSHA, Occupational Health and Safety. Now, their mission is good, folks. They're not the enemy. The mission is to ensure the safety and health of America's workers. And they do this by setting and enforcing standards. And this is probably the most contentious area is what are the standards. But they are based on sound engineering and sound safety practices. They also provide training, outreach, and education, and then they work for continuing improvement of operations. What's our relationship, ours being the pork industry, with OSHA? Comments coming from OSHA directors are summarized here that OSHA realizes the swine industry is changing and that pork producers are getting larger. There are bigger, more people involved, and this is bringing us under the radar screen because historically OSHA has kept hands off on the independent small farm. You had this red barn image out in the country. We're going to leave these folks alone. Well, that's not the case because they see a lot of their work is tied to the number of employees in operation. As they see employee numbers go up, they start looking into these operations, and the industry is becoming more on the OSHA radar screen. Just a little bit of information from OSHA. Over a 5-year period, 58 inspections, 42 different companies, 103 violations, $108,000 fine, and they settled at $97,000. And what happens is OSHA comes out to a farm and they'll identify everything that goes wrong, and then they'll work with that operation to remediate, fix some things, and then with a good faith effort they'll reduce those fines. Here's one farm experience back in 2004 was sort of a benchmark and really got OSHA's attention on this one. They operation had feed to mill. It was a big operation. Had feed to mill, sow farms, and they're all linked together in the same business. Somebody got hurt really bad in the feed mill, but because they're the same business, once OSHA comes on the farm, you can go whatever business, whatever umbrella that business covers, they can go into. So then they went out to pig barns and found a whole lot of stuff going wrong. 31 violations, $198,000. Initially, they settled for $87,000, 17 violations. And folks, some of these, a lot of electrical stuff, and we'll get in a little bit later, but there were some egregious ones. I mean, they had exits that had padlocks on the door. You just don't do that stuff. When can OSHA come to the farm? We get this question quite a bit. OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, is prevented from spending any funds to issue or enforce any regulation that applies to a person who farms and employs 10 or fewer employees. 10. There's a benchmark. By law, OSHA cannot do anything with that operation. There's their benchmark. 10. Now, I know several farms down in North Carolina talking to Dad and his two sons, and we were talking about safety, and he said, we don't have to worry about OSHA because Yeah, we all farm together, but we have 3 separate business entities, and within each one, there were less than 10 employees. So they were not under OSHA's radar. He thought he was covered. Because they had less employees, they didn't have to fill out safety reports, they didn't have to have a safety program in place, or didn't have to do any training, and didn't have to worry too much about fixing safety hazards, just work around them. But that's not right. That's not the case. A farmer who employs one or more people has a legal responsibility to provide a safe workplace. If you've got somebody outside your family working for you, you have legal responsibility to provide a safe workplace. OSHA's not going to regulate you, so who does regulate this situation? If you have something go wrong, well, it's your insurance company, and if they don't work things out, then the legal system comes into play. If you get sued by providing something, highly dangerous situation. And so then, what standards are looked at with then, typically the discussion goes back and look at what are the OSHA standards. So the 10, you're under OSHA guide rules, have to follow the regulatory aspect, but if you ever get slapped with a fine, those are the standards you're going to be measured up against. Okay, how many people, well, anybody just getting started with workplace safety? I mean, you're thinking about it, you got a few things on the farm. Okay, all right. Maybe you and I should talk here, because I'm going to be talking specifically about where do you start, some tools available, and how to use them. First thing to do, go to pork.org. And don't go there just yet. We're still working on the website. We have some, just now finishing touches on resources. We'll be platforming of all of our resources on pork.org under safety website. We used to have everything in hard copy, and we're moving over to electronic delivery where you can go online, download these resources, and then utilize them in your operation. So we've got a lot of stuff. Everything from user guides on how to get started, how to conduct a safety program audit, all the way down to employee training materials, SOPs, standard operating procedures, a policy manual. And we've had some of these resources in place. We're adding a few more. What I'd like to focus on now is this user guide. Because once you go to pork.org, you see everything there. Step 2, if you don't have a program, is pull this user guide. Now, I think you have a copy in front of you. And we have and this is a draft. I just printed a few of these off because this is what you would download from our website. And folks, this is a step-by-step guide. I mean, 1 through 9, do this, 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 and this sequence to get your program up and running. And we break it down into these 9 key steps, looking at management commitment, ending up with creating a plan, evaluating that plan. Let's go over each one of these. As we look at management commitment, the user guide will lead you through the process to define responsibilities. Who's supposed to do what? Senior management, farm management, department managers, employees. Guide you through that process to determine who's responsible. Also, there are instructions on how to get started analyzing your farm. Next step is to figure out where you need to go, you need to figure out where you're at. And analysis is a key point. That's looking at any available information you have, your work comp claims, if you're tracking any injuries, any data that you have readily available that you can pull in, you start looking at it, and then you combine that with program and facility assessment. And we have examples here of what to look for. When, and we don't have time to go through conducting everything to look for in a breeding barn, a gestation barn, or a finishing barn. That would be topic for another day, what to look for. Because we're going to be looking at everything from fan covers to electrical connections to lockout, tagout, all kinds of things to look at. And we have utilized Port Checkoff funds to develop, basically, it's a checklist. And you have a couple of those in front of you. One is a program, and one, you have an example of breeding and gestation safety, what we call them safety audits. So basically, you pick this up, and you start walking the barns. You come in the front door of the office. That would be primary for the program. But if you're out on the barn itself, You shower in, go to the break room, you start looking around. What do you look for? Well, you look for posters on the wall. You look for lockout, tagout equipment. You look for, make sure nothing's just laying around that would be dangerous. And so by utilizing this form, you can develop a plan to walk through the barns, and you just check yes or no. And then when you're done with it, see how many yeses you have, see how many no's you have, and to think about making all the no's over in yeses. A planned sequence to do that. And here's an example of the top. It's a pretty basic, straightforward form, and then on the left-hand side, we have all the criteria to look at. And when you go online, you'll see this will be in Excel. So you just download the spreadsheet. First off, you'll sign a user agreement to get into the site. And once you access, you say, I will utilize these resources for my own benefit. Basically, what that takes is responsibility off of us. Once you download it and utilize it in your farm, it's yours. We don't really claim to it, but we build it in Excel. So if you don't like one of the lines, you take it off. You can adapt it. We've built all these tools. You can share these tools to be customizable, or you can cut and paste, or prioritize. You may want to, break it out in phases. We've got 30 yeses and 40 no's on this thing. Well, let's take this set of no's, and so you can break it out and create your own spreadsheet tools, again, to go back and follow up farm audits later on. We also have a program audit, and this will be primarily focused on records, documentation that you have in the facility. So as we looked at trying to make a tool that was easy to use, we decided we just couldn't get everything together. So we thought program office, go to the home office, wherever it's at. That's where most of this audit would take place. Then the facility audits are out in the barns. Getting back to the user guide then, once you identify those hazards, the user guide will walk you through these 4 basic things you have to do. I mean, if you've got a hazard, you don't have any other choice other than these 4 things. You can eliminate it, you can abate it, but you limit exposure or control it. You can't get rid of it, so you try to work around it. And then, if you have to train people to deal with it and provide protection equipment to protect them while they deal with it. So you either get rid of it, or you deal with it. And then you have to document how you've gone through all these steps. And then he leads up to an action plan. What has to be done, the sequence is going to be done, who's responsible, the goals to meet, and the schedule to get it done. And we have templates in the back, again, blank forms that will be part of the kit that you can identify those major action steps and who's in charge, completion date. And then once you get that done, then you can move over into the next big area of employee training. And folks, we've had a package out, Pork Production Safety System, for several years now, and it's very heavily weighted toward employee training. There's a participant workbook, employee workbook, lesson plans. If you're going to train people on safety, we've got a PowerPoint presentation with lesson plan, what to do, things you need to take to the barn that day, some discussion on what to talk about, and then for individual training. And then we have also computer-based training, which is plug and play. All the topics that we have that are pertinent to workplace safety are on a self-directed study guide. You can set an employee down, punch play, and they will have that information will be conveyed. So once you get through that starter guide, then you will have gone through, you've got all these 9 basic steps to get your safety program up and running.